When I say that this was one of the most disturbing horror films of all time, I genuinely mean it. And I think that this movie is going to be a horror classic in the years to come, if it isn't one already. The Substance is co-produced, written, and directed by Coralie Farge. This film stars Demi Moore, Margaret Qualley, and Dennis Quaid in the lead roles. So going into this film, I was actually pretty excited for it, as I had seen the first trailer that was released a couple months ago, and I thought it looked really good. The trailers did not showcase any part of the story. It's almost set up like a montage, and it has the tone and themes of what this movie is going to have, but what we got in this movie was a lot more horrifying than that, and I think this is one of the best movies of this year so far. What The Substance was able to accomplish is being one of the best written films of the year so far, as this film won Best Screenplay at the Cannes Film Festival, which is definitely deserved because the screenwriting in this film is absolutely excellent. The way that this film can say so much in a 2-hour and 20-minute movie without actually saying it. This is one of those films that is so visually striking that you can't take your eyes off the screen, because the presentation in this movie is just off the charts, that it actually complements the screenplay and makes this movie come together, and it is one of the most disturbing as well as one of the best movies of the year. So let's just dive right into my positives first, and I do want to start with the performances here, as Demi Moore is excellent in this movie, and I would even go to say that this is the best performance that I have seen from her. She absolutely killed every single scene that she was in, and she has a very physically demanding performance in this film. I was absolutely stunned by her amazing performance here, as well as Margaret Qualley, who has been one of the best underrated young actresses that's working in today's industry, and I think she was great in this movie, and also might be her best performance as well. It complements with Demi Moore's performance, but easily one of the biggest surprises was Dennis Quaid, as he fills in for Ray Liotta, who is supposed to be in this film but unfortunately passed away. So they got Dennis Quaid in here, and he is terrific. So much so that it made me forget about his awful performance in that movie Reagan a couple weeks ago. He was perfectly casted in this role, and he's not in it a lot, but I found that his presence and his persona just worked for this type of character that he was playing, and he had some very memorable scenes, especially one that involves shrimp. The visual effects in this movie are just outstanding. I truly believe that this deserves an Academy Award nomination for Best Visual Effects, because wow, I mean, the use of practical effects in this movie and how disturbing these practical effects are used in this film is just outstanding. I mean, the way that it just keeps developing and evolving is just shocking to me, where I genuinely believed everything that I was watching, because this has a lot of body horror. Like the 1986 remake, The Fly, there's a lot of different transformations and it slowly starts changing, and we get a lot of that in this movie as well, and I thought it was absolutely insane. This movie is going to age so well. Makeup and hairstyling definitely deserves a lot of credit here and should get an Oscar nomination as well. It's absolutely so fascinating how they were able to use this in the film, especially when this film is truly all about beauty and your image. I also want to mention the sound design in this film, which again, I also think should be nominated for an Academy Award, because the sound in this movie is so perfectly used in this film that it actually adds so much to this film, especially in the horror-like moments that you just can't get out of your head. It is so perfectly crafted. The cinematography is also fantastic in this film, as well as the direction. This is one of the best shot films of the year. The presentation is off the charts. The pacing of this film is electric from start to finish. This movie does not give you a break, but it doesn't ever feel too overwhelming where you can't process what's going on in this film. Now we finally get into the topic that everyone wants to hear about, and that is the horror. Is this movie scary? Is it horrifying? And yes, this is one of the scariest movies I have seen of the decade. There are just images in this movie that I will never get out of my head. There are violent, brutal moments in this film that isn't just like, oh, that's super cool how they're able to, do these violent moments. It is so bloody and brutal and feels so vicious that it actually really crawled under my skin. And of course, this movie has that satirical body horror element where everything is over the top and it's very purposeful, but there's a lot of grounded elements of this film that truly worked for me, and it made this film even more terrifying. This film doesn't utilize any jump scares in this movie, which is such a breath of fresh air because they are very cheap and lazy, and it's something I talk about in all of my reviews of horror films. This movie was just simply terrifying, and most of this is just due to the fantastic screenwriting, the presentation, the visual effects. All of these technical aspects that are coming together is really what makes this movie great. This film is not afraid to showcase true violence and real horror, as that is one of my favorite aspects about this movie. This film is not afraid to go there, to show you some of the most disturbing things, and is still a well-written, well-acted, just amazing film. This film is also filled to the brim with so many different themes and allegories about our current life and how we look at celebrities and aging and birth, and with a mother-daughter type relationship, even though that's not what this movie is. There's a lot of those different elements that I think are blended in this film so well without the characters having to explain things to the audience. There is so much to gain and understand from this film that I honestly would love to watch this movie way more, but it is so horrifying and so disturbing. I didn't know how to get out of my seat after I watched the film. I was just sitting there in just silence, and I didn't really know what to do. This film also has a ton of references to The Shining, 2001: A Space Odyssey, The Fly, and a ton of other amazing horror films in here. So if you're a horror movie buff like I am, there's a ton to appreciate from a reference standpoint, but it does its own thing, and it doesn't feel like it's trying to copy from any other film. This film is so unique to it itself, and you definitely need to see it at the theater. Overall, The Substance is one of my favorite films of the year so far, as I absolutely love this movie to death. I'm going to be rooting for this film at the Academy Awards. It has a fantastic story, well-written characters that I truly cared about, amazing technical aspects, phenomenal direction, and I just hope that we can get more movies like this. This is so personal and human and just not afraid to go the extra mile, to be intense, to be crazy, but to be such a well-made film that you can tell had a lot of heart and soul and passion to this thing. And there's so much to be talked about than just an disturbing horror film that's just like, ooh, it's gross. Like, there's so much more than that. You should definitely go out and support this film. I will be out of my way being one of the biggest supporters of this film. I can't wait to own this movie on a 4K because it deserves it. I am giving The Substance an 8 out of 10. Thank you guys so much for checking out this review. As I want to know below in the comment section, have you seen The Substance? And if now that you've seen this review, are you going to be checking it out? I would love to hear all of your thoughts. Before you guys check out this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, leave a like as you normally should, and ring that notification bell so I can see you all in a brand new video. And I will see you guys at the movies.